Hello, everyone, and welcome to African Ascent. Please don't be horrified by seeing me on your screen and turn it off and wonder where is your wonderful host, Tedros Quiros, because actually he's still with me. He's right here. He's with you. He has not abandoned the show to a new host. But what we're going to do today is kind of reverse his position and put him in the position of the person being interviewed. And for that, in order to do that, he needed to ask somebody. He needed to ask somebody to interview him. So I was lucky enough to be the person who was asked. Thank you so much for having me, Tedros. My name is Julie Rold, and I'm a colleague of Tedros's at Berklee College of Music. And what many of you may not realize is that Tedros is a wonderful writer of all kinds of things, nonfiction, but also I think his real passion is fiction. Am I correct?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean,
No.
I know, you have a lot of great ideas and you love to write philosophy and comment about the world, but I know how much more time you spend on your fiction.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and it's what so this is your story collection, this novel, and then you're working on another novel now.
The sequel that you're reading now.
Right, that's right,
yes.
yeah. So at any rate, I'll start by showing everyone the book. It's a wonderful novel, Cambridge Days. And just to begin, Tedros, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about the novel?
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, I would like my audience to know that Professor Julie Rold, characteristically humble, is one of the greatest American writers, in fact.
I love that praise. He always praises me.
She has been a recipient of numerous awards that would take time to list. When she was quite young, she's younger, I should say, because she's still young. She received one of the most prestigious awards in the country from Scribner's as one of the best American short story writers. And since then, she has gotten quite a few of them. And she's now busily producing a work of art that she's been working on for a few years now. I must tell you that you're looking at a perfectionist, extremely hard on herself, who, unlike me, who hates drafts, enjoys writing them, honing them, developing them tirelessly, and never praising what she produces. It is I, as you might have noticed, who praises her against her will, because self-praise is just not a characteristic of hers. So I'm truly honored to be interviewed by a writer of her stature. I could not have done better. I'm very lucky to be her colleague at Berklee College of Music. We are colleagues, we're also friends, and our friendship now is over 10 years old.
Yeah,
and,
maybe longer.
Yeah, maybe longer.
I can't remember.
And we just blend. I work with her extremely well. She is honest, but also firm. For example, now she is helping me to craft a sequel to Cambridge Days called The Passionate Man. In a very gentle way, she has made me write it 3 times, I think. And then
you still haven't matched my record, maybe 300 times for me.
She is an incredible draft writer, so I'm learning how to do drafts from her.
But so, tell them about Cambridge Days, though. I think everyone. I think people should know. What it's. Quickly. Yes. How would you best describe it?
It is a description of a city that I fell in love with when I was relatively young. I moved to the city of Cambridge in the early 90s, 1982. I was doing a postgraduate work in philosophy with the great American philosopher John Rawls, during which time I began surveying the scene in Cambridge night and day. I have been known to have said that because of my long walks, both during the day and during the night, the coffee shops in which I sat, the bars to which I went, to hunt down characters with tremendous curiosity. I traced 3 or 4 characters that fascinated me. One of them is a character who turned out to be one of my best friends, who died about 10 years ago. The other character is still alive. We haven't.
Is this the one based on? The
yes,
first one is based on
yes.
is Conrad.
Conrad,
right? Yeah.
that's right.
All right.
Elias, who is associated with Harvard University, in which I was just hired to begin teaching, still alive, still functioning. We haven't really talked about the character that I constructed after him. I constructed this restless character who liked to hang out at nights under neon lights, because Cambridge is just gorgeous at night. And I would just pursue him. I would meet him every day, and then I would follow him. Very creepy. All these, of course.
Did he know this?
No, I don't think so. I don't know whether you'd be upset with me or not when I have reduced his existence to this restless character in Cambridge days. Then there is Conrad, and Conrad was a brilliant painter. The real Conrad himself was a brilliant painter, a Harvard grad. He briefly taught at Harvard. And he had one peculiar habit that gave me a foray to the novel. His obsession with Asian women, most particularly Koreans. He married 3, I think. He could have married more.
In the novel, he marries 3.
Yes, he could have married more. He loved them, he cared for them, and he was never a sexist, just a lover. He lasted after them. He also spoke fluent Korean. So he was fascinated by the culture, by the language, and by what he used to call Asian beauty, Asian physiognomy. So there is this major character, Conrad.
Yes.
Then there was another character, again, alive. He's still alive in Cambridge. He has a child now, who was also a painter, who moved from Utah.
Neil, the character Neil. Right.
Neil was quite the opposite of Conrad, and they did not like one another, because we used to hang out at the Coffee Connection, the 3 of us, and Neil was very unsuccessful with women. He loved the idea of falling in love with them in abstractions, whereas Conrad was actually doing the love. And then they will talk about women.
Or at least Conrad was thinking he was doing the love. I mean, it sounds like he had some
issues. Yes,
some serious
of course.
issues,
as you know, his life ended in with a tremendous tragedy. Then. The women of Cambridge days, which is the subject of our conversation. Some of the women are stylized after Conrad's adventures, particularly the Asian women. But I chose Asian women over and against the type he actually chose in real life, who are gentle but firm, who are not submissive. He would enter into these relationships with them because he had stereotyped Asia.
Yeah, it sounds like he had, I mean, the novel presents him, you know, it's obviously very difficult, I think. I think it would be difficult for an Asian woman to, you know, read this, only in that, you know, the novel presents he's oddly honest about his predilections, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, he definitely has very limited attitudes. You know, it's interesting to think of what was going on with him. You know?
Yes, it was very difficult to fathom him, Julie. On the one hand, because he was cerebral, because he was intelligent, he was capable of interacting with women humanely, respectfully, intelligently, as his soulmates.
Yes.
On the other hand, for reasons that you must have sensed in the novel, there was something in his internal makeup that wasn't respectful of women.
Yeah, well, it's almost as if he had a vision of how, in some ways I felt he did have real relationships with them. But there was a quality in which they were interchangeable too.
Absolutely.
He wanted something from them, and then when he was confronted, and when he had to move beyond whatever his initial fantasy was, and accept their humanity and the reality of what a relationship with each individual woman meant, he was challenged. He couldn't and they would leave him. I mean, they had fantasies of him too, which was very interesting. It was based on this kind of mutual shared fantasy that they had of each other.
I think you put it quite well. I think you captured him. He was handsome to a fault, with the silky black hair, tall, very gentle on the outside, very social. But remember too, in the novel, although I don't in a full-fledged way bring it out, I wanted the reader to sense it. He also had a disease. He was a manic depressive.
Yeah, that's clear.
So see the mood swings from respect to disrespect, from confidence to the absence of it, had something to do, I think, with the nature of the disease. Additionally, remember there is a scene in which he is entering a cafe. He has located a certain Korean woman that he is hunting. He has managed to get her. So they are sitting down, and he's already beginning to court her.
Yes.
Then 2, 3 other Korean women walk in too.
He immediately thinks, he marries one and then wishes he had gone with the other one. I mean,
Precisely.
So it's very strange.
And his eyes always restless. He's talking to her.
I mean,
she's fully focusing on him. But 3 other women have walked in. And now he's spreading his visuality between 3 women at the same time, and 4 of them do not know whom he belongs to.
No, there is something he is creepy. But at the same time, I do think you succeed in bringing out an interesting humanity in him, in spite of that creepiness.
Well, as one of the reviewers, I think you were quite kind. I was very afraid when I wrote those sections that they were going to be condemned for them. Well, because as you know, these sexual scenes are also, they tell a story of their own. And as you said, no Asian woman with her right mind is going to read through the 3 pages and enjoy them. It wasn't easy. That part was not easy for me to do.
I mean, his attitude is offensive for sure. But I think that the portrait that you create of him manages to be more complex than just how offensive he is. And that is, I mean, it's very difficult to do. I mean,
it was extremely difficult, Julie, to do. And then there is the other side of him, Conrad on Sunday afternoons, when the disease subsides now, and he's the Harvard intellectual. He's carrying his painterly boxes. His wife is with him. They go to the Charles River. They sit by the bench. They take seeds and crumbs of bread for the ducks and ducklings. They sit on the meadows. He brushes her hair. There is a movement there that is for the movies. There is also that side of him, extremely romantic.
Yes, and also, I mean, what's interesting is that every one of the women leave. He doesn't leave anybody, right?
No,
they all
leave him.
They all leave him.
They get fascinated in the beginning,
we're actually happy that they leave.
Yes, and remember too, when he finally became extremely sick, and then he couldn't get up. He slept every day. He couldn't go to work. He couldn't produce. He wasn't showering, and his wife could not take it anymore because that was not her first impression. He became a character, a human being that she could not recognize. And then remember too, after she left him, and then he entered the hospital. He was put on a wheelchair. He couldn't paint.
Yeah.
And he was interacting with other individuals in similar situations. Then he begins to write poetry, and
Yeah.
the poems are extraordinary. And one or two paintings were also done in the
Yeah.
hospital. And he dies very
Yeah.
early on.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is Conrad.
Right, right. Of course, that's only one. That's one character in your novel with this very flawed, very sexist understanding of women, and but at the same time, the flip side of him, which is really vulnerable.
Very
which
vulnerable.
But I think with the portrait of Neil, who you said is Conrad's opposite.
Yes.
This man who never consummates a relationship,
No.
but yet is deeply in love.
Yes.
But he does consummate a relationship, but he's most in love with the woman from Barbados,
Precisely.
Heidi,
Yes.
who won't be in a relationship with him.
She wouldn't.
Yeah, yeah.
And he had loved her very deeply. He had told her so. And in the novel, as you know, at one point in their relationship, she essentially told him directly that she cannot betray her race.
Yeah,
that
she
cannot
marry
outside of her
a white man.
race.
I mean, it seemed to be. But what's interesting, though, is you have that moment, and it's oddly early in the novel, where they've started the school in Tanzania, Dar es Salaam.
Yes, yes.
And Heidi comes to the conference.
Yes,
And, he hasn't seen her in 20 years.
20 years, yes.
And she says, she's gotten to a place where she thinks she can be with him.
Precisely.
But it's interesting that you put that at the beginning.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
and then we see him yearning and desperate and being rejected by Heidi.
And then,
yes.
and then she comes back
Yes.
to his life. And the
Yeah.
ending in his case, thanks to Francois, the African friend of his, after years and years of anguish and depression, when he went to Dar es Salaam, he made him an English teacher. He learned the native language, and then he produced two masterpieces that the Tanzanians fell in love with. One on pain, which he called African pain, and the other one on joy, which he called African joy. He blossoms, he flourishes, and then Heidi also joins him. And the ending for him, it's almost biblical. He was fully redeemed, fully compensated for, and he always woke up in the morning and told Francois that he doesn't want to die anywhere else. He wants to die in Dar es Salaam. This is where death has a meaning, he says in one line, where human life is valued, where I am recognized, where I am treated like a human being. And I did not describe Heidi very much because the novel ends after that.
But you do have the long middle section from her point of view.
Precisely.
In which we
the
learn
discussions on women,
those were all really interesting.
Of,
those were great.
Black women.
I mean, I think. Well, I was going to actually ask some kind of bigger questions about those issues, because although I think the novel, initially it's driven by those relationships between Nyerere. Did I say it right?
Nyerere, yes.
Say it again for me?
Yes.
Nyerere.
Nyerere.
Sorry, I didn't get that name right.
Yes.
Neil, sometimes Conrad, Elias.
Yes.
All of their, it shifts. I mean, you shift midway through.
Yes.
And then we get these different sections from the points of view of the women, they love. So in Nyerere's case, it's Adora from
Adora.
Ghana.
Yes.
Oh,
That's
Adora.
a construction.
Adora.
Yes.
Adora.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, Heidi.
Yes.
And then you have other women, too.
Quite a few of them,
Yeah.
yes.
Rosa, that's a great character.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
But, so I think, why was it important to you? I mean, that range set, you've got, Adora, Ghanaian, or representing Africa.
Yes.
And then Heidi, representing the experience of
A black woman in America,
yeah,
I think, something like that. Yes. From the Caribbean,
Caribbean living here, but
Yes.
both of them.
Yes.
So why was it, clearly this was important to you, and the type of work that their interests are very interesting too. How Adora's work is on the African body.
Yes.
What's her name? The African biological self.
Biological self.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Heidi, so competent. Comparing herself though to Ellison's character in The Invisible Man.
Precisely.
So, what was important to you? Why was it so important to you to bring those ideas, or to use the women to talk about those ideas for you?
I think the women that I ended up writing about are reflections of the types of men whom they were dating, and the pushbacks and the fascinations, most particularly in the case of Heidi. Initially, it is Neil who is attracted to her. She did not have him in mind.
Yeah.
And then she has her own project, a racialized project. He is looking for love.
But she's very clear. She says to him frequently, even he doesn't understand, and she's angry. It's clear he doesn't understand her experience. He wants to.
Precisely.
He wants to be sympathetic.
That's right, but he couldn't.
He can't,
Yeah.
right? And I think in addition to, sorry to interrupt you, but in addition to that need she has to do what her family wants, to be with somebody, who is also black, I think there's a quality to her rejection of him that is also about his inability to understand. He can't understand until somehow he goes further. He has to go further before he can be with her.
I think you're quite right.
Yeah.
Now, to directly answer your question, for years I've been listening to black women speaking about black men, but also speaking about white men. Some of whom really love this white man, not because they are white, but they somehow felt realized in them. And then they will simultaneously, exactly like Heidi, refuse to transcend where the heart is leading them by using politics to control the desires of the heart. There is a deep conflict, and this is a philosophical insight that I'm working with, between the language of the heart and the imperatives of politics. And so some of these black women who are genuinely falling in love and interested in certain white men, not necessarily because they are rich, not necessarily because they are visible, not necessarily because they are powerful, not necessarily because they could be used, but in certain cases they genuinely feel comfortable with them.
Yeah.
But then when they share this with some other black women, some are more political than others. Some of them resist this idea, and they tell them that you couldn't possibly do this. We're not going to betray the race. We can't really love outside of our race. Who's going to love this black man? They're going to end up unmarried, in prison, killed, and so on and so forth. So I would hear these conversations, both in academic circles and outside of academic circles. So then one day, this Heidi character comes to my mind, based on a real relationship between Neil and Heidi. There was such a character, there was such a person who actually fell in love with this Barbadian. So I use this background knowledge of resistance and love that I've been listening to and try to embody it in her.
Yes.
I don't know how successfully I did it, but that was the struggle.
Yeah, but yet at the same time, as a white person, I felt that you portrayed Heidi's frustrations, political frustrations with Neil, honestly and sympathetically. Neil,
he didn't understand her.
he did,
never
or
did.
just the situation of what it meant. Like he would
Precisely.
say, "Why can't you get, let it go?"
He didn't want her to talk about race.
That's right, and that's his inability to do that.
Precisely.
Makes the relationship impossible, in spite of whatever she might feel for him,
Precisely.
right?
That is,
Right.
I think, how he shot himself on the foot.
Right, yeah.
Had he shown her sympathy and understanding, instead of this diatribe in
Yes.
which he's literally
Yes.
lecturing her.
Yes, but that's so often the problem with
Yes,
white
sadly.
people, right? You know?
Sadly,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
the stark
Yeah.
case that
Yeah.
I struggled with.
That
And I
tends-
tried to enter her mind.
Yeah.
And then by then I had read The Invisible One, The Invisible
Invisible
Man,
Man, yeah.
by
Ralph
Ellison.
Ellison, yeah.
And then when she began thinking about this notion of invisibility, then I added the Invisible Woman.
Yeah.
Because he was making her invisible.
Yeah.
Or he was making her visible in a way in which she did not want to be visible.
Yeah.
She wanted to be visible as a black person.
Right.
He wanted her to be visible as a human being,
Yeah.
as if one could be a human being without, sadly, these pigmentations,
Right.
which are products of the environment, of course, but we are all pigmented,
Yeah.
to some,
Yeah.
to more than others. But Neil was living in a zone of his own in which he thinks that race could be transcended, and in
Right.
that one could just simply love a person
Yeah.
without really recognizing them. He did not
Yeah.
see the machinations of oppression.
Right, right, yeah, exactly.
These
That's right.
are the, for me, the lenses through which I see identity politics. It's not merely about representation of these skin pigmentations and gender and sex pigmentations. It's about recognizing the way one feels oppressed. You see?
Yeah.
Because one cannot really deny the other when the other says, I'm being oppressed precisely because I'm being looked at in this particular way. You don't win the battle by saying, no,
Yeah.
you have a false way in which you think
Right.
you're being seen.
Right.
I merely look at you as a human being, he
Yeah.
tells her, but you may be doing that, but
Right.
I'm not just that.
Yeah.
I'm also an invisible black woman, she
Yeah,
tells him.
Yeah. Have you had any women from the Caribbean who've read that character and commented on Heidi?
No, not yet.
Really? Yeah, it'd be very interesting, I think.
Amazingly, Julie. Cambridge
Yeah.
Days, I don't well, the customer review section indicates that it's being read, but I don't know who is reading it.
Yeah.
And it's not being read through this subtleties that you saw. This section on Heidi, for example, they should have made the novel.
Yeah, no, it's that
Interesting.
section on Heidi is
Yeah.
really. I love that section about Heidi.
Yeah, I worked
Yeah.
very hard on
Yeah,
that section and the Asian women
Yeah.
whom I was trying to give them a platform to represent themselves. Remember the Asian academic, for example, that Conrad met at a conference.
Yes, so
whom
there was-
he was trying to treat as he did others.
Right.
And she had gone to this conference
Right.
to discuss identity.
Right.
So she read through him, and then she wouldn't let him even get close to her. And then they began talking about Korea. She told him, "You may be speaking the language, but you don't seem to be understand the Korean personality."
Yeah.
And so on.
Yeah.
So
What about, but like me and many people at Berkeley, we have many Korean students. Have you had any Korean students read part of that section?
no.
No, yeah. You should see. You should see how they respond
Yes,
to it.
I really
Yeah.
want to see responses from Caribbeans and
Yeah.
Asians, particularly Asian women. I was waiting for a review
Yeah.
in which they would go after me.
Yeah.
And I was going to respond. I was preparing myself to
Right.
respond.
Right.
It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. So I want to ask you another question. This is kind of a bigger question, though, about, something that I thought was really interesting that you had one of your characters reflect on. So this is Nyerere,
Yes.
the philosopher,
Yes.
in love with Adora.
Adora.
The
Yeah.
Ghanaian.
Yes.
And he, at one point, tells her that, that most people only understand the masks they wear, he says. But as a philosopher, I learned how to separate masks from essences. This is one of my favorite,
Okay.
of many
Yes.
great lines in the book.
Yes.
I mean, I think the great pleasure of reading your work, because you're a philosopher, well, in addition to your amazing descriptions of Cambridge, I think that the book really is the way you present ideas, the world of ideas in this really lyrical way, I think is really one of the strengths of the book. Anyway, so I guess what I was asking is, so if that's the case, I would assume that in some ways when you create a character, you're hoping to present the essence of that person.
Yes.
And to separate, to get to not have them wear the mask,
Yes.
right? And so I just, what essences were you hoping to create in each of the characters, women and men? Yeah. Or maybe the same essence, maybe it was the essence of their humanity, and I think that's always the case. But
yes.
Yeah.
That we are all capable of transcending our identities. Although these identities are precisely the masks through which others see us, since they cannot see us directly, what they can see, which they think they are seeing, are their representations of us. See? Descartes famously contended in his meditations, for example, that strictly speaking, he says, if he is certain about anything at all, one, he is certain that he is Descartes, who is certain that he thinks he is Descartes. And secondly, that he thinks because he is Descartes, who doesn't only think that he is Descartes, but he is actually Descartes, that he has access to his beliefs, to his thoughts, to his conceptions, to his dreams, to his impulses. But others do not have access to any of this. So in the end then, when two human beings are relating with one another in search of these essences, the stumbling block is the existence of these masks. Because the masks are the devices of representation. When I cannot directly access you right now, I don't really know how you're thinking of me. But I am fated to think that there may be a way by which I could represent what I think you're thinking of me.
Right.
Right? And now these identities then, race, gender, and sex, in the end are nothing more than masks behind which we hide ourselves, convinced that others can only look at us as masks.
And so often they do, right?
So often they do.
Right.
So it's masks guessing what these other masks are. And what is being sacrificed is the who-ness. Who are we really? Of course, you put it quite well. We are humans.
And so is that why you felt the need to, in addition to showing that the second half of the book was dedicated to largely going into the internal world of all the people that were presented to us
Precisely.
in the first. So you wanted to show Cambridge days, but then show Cambridge lives.
Yes,
in a way.
precisely.
Maybe, yeah.
Exactly. That was the dream. And then this yearning for as you correctly pointed out, this yearning to decouple masks and essences, I try to represent through the character of Adora.
Right.
Because Adora now, unlike Heidi, the invisible woman, is visible. But she is visible in a way that she has no control over. If you notice, I describe her as extremely beautiful. So when she's walking in the streets of Cambridge, each and every one of these people who are seeing her now are representing her once again through these masks, which she is fighting against, because she conceives of herself as an intellectual, first-rate intellectual, who is trying to help Africans to know their bodies.
Her ideas about that are very interesting.
Unbelievable. Hence her idea of the biological self,
Yeah.
the African biological self.
Right.
Again, this is in search of these essences and an attempt to present the African to non-Africans as a human being with bodies that Africans themselves do not seem to understand. Diseased bodies, victims of sickle anemia, with a limited understanding of technology, of medicine, a very distorted understanding of tradition, of rituals, making it possible for the West to misrepresent them through these masks that they're wearing, masks that the West is imposing on them. But they don't even know their bodies. They don't even know how to deal with certain kinds of ailments. They take very dangerous medicines. They justify these medicines as African. And these medicines are not African. So she's exploding these myths on the one hand. But she's also dealing now, her project, unlike Heidi's and Neil's, oppressive black men who do not look at her as a human being who thinks. Hence, there is a dream in that section. It's a dream of my imagination to produce a new kind of woman, a new kind of black woman. Unlike Heidi, totally unlike Heidi, with a different kind of project. Heidi is responding to marriages and loves. If you notice, Adora is looking for someone who looks at her as a competent, brilliant human being with whom she could live as a human being, who has a realized essence, namely thinking and living. So this is a woman that I constructed. She is nowhere a distillation of any experience that I've had. If I had succeeded as a novelist in Cambridge days, it is my really original construction of this woman. There may never be a woman like her. Maybe that woman is me. One never knows.
Yeah.
You see?
Yes.
Because I'm all over these characters. If
Yes,
you
of
know,
course,
You,
yeah.
you can locate me in all of them.
Sure. Sure.
Not just in most people who read it
Right.
think that I'm
Yes.
a singular character, narrare.
Yeah.
No, I'm in all
Yeah.
the characters,
Sure.
including the Asian women, as a matter of fact, through which I'm trying to enter their essences and try to understand them from inside out.
Yes.
An Asian woman being misrepresented.
Yes.
A white man being misrepresented. In the end, everybody is misrepresenting the
Yes.
other, to return to the Cartesian theme, because we have no access to others.
Yes. But as you know now, I mean, so much of this accessing can, as you know, with the controversies of who can tell which stories, what right do we have to tell the stories of others?
Yes.
Did you have any, what were your fears? You know, I mean, what were you afraid of getting wrong as you approached some of these characters? Very different to yourself, right?
Yes.
I mean, I think this is a big, obviously with the especially with the recent American Dirt scandals and controversies. You know, why? You know, who gets to tell what story? How do we know if we're allowed to tell certain stories?
Precisely.
Yeah.
You have asked me
Yeah.
the question that used to haunt me when I was writing Cambridge Days. One, which we already talked about, the Asian women. Secondly, even black women. Because I'm taking risks to enter people's minds. It's maybe I'm projecting. So every one of these characters could come after me and tell me, yes, it's fictionally exciting, but you're really distorting us.
Right.
You're not even describing us correctly. Who is Heidi? Which black woman do you know who actually thinks this way? Who are these Asian women whom I'm describing sweetly and firmly? Who are you in the end? What gives you the license to even enter them? Here, of course, as a writer, you know, the license is the imagination.
Right.
That's all that we have, I and you, in the end.
Yes.
The work that you're doing, Lines of the Mind, for example.
Yeah, no,
That's for me a epitome of description.
No, I have the same issue too. I mean, I ask myself this all the time, you know, what right do I have to tell certain stories? I haven't made up my mind about that. You know, I feel on some level like you that we, with the imagination and with our common humanity, we should be able to. But yet I feel fear, you know, that I would get it wrong in a really,
You're quite right.
you know, bad way.
No, you're right. I think so.
I just don't, you know, I just don't know.
It's you,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, because you know Cambridge Days
Yeah.
the most, who gave me hope and who justified me in this adventure.
Yeah.
When Cambridge Days was not reviewed in the New York Times, so forth and so on, and that's when I began saying to myself, maybe what I have written is a failed novel. Why is it that human beings did not get excited by it? Because here I was making an attempt to enter people's minds against the Cartesian warning. Because in philosophy you can, but in the imagination in the end, that is what licenses the writer to write. It's a guesswork.
Yeah.
But some guesses are better than others. And sometimes we get it right. I think my construction of Adora is something that I'm very proud of. She's not a sociological character. She's not a character extracted out of anything that I know. This is a woman that I'm manufacturing. And you'd think that people would admire this. Sadly, they don't.
Yes, or they do, but it's become more complicated. And, you know, what other stories, we need to make sure that we read other people's stories too. Yeah, okay. I had some other questions too. So, you know, I thought it was interesting. So what, you know, I think love drives this book.
Yes.
In so many ways, you know. So we have both Nayeri and Neil spend a lot of time thinking, you know, and pining for women. I mean, and Conrad is spending his time pining for women, you know, and there's a lot of the sense, the need for love really drives this book.
Precisely. All
Right.
of them. All of them.
Yeah.
Are trying to fall in love, to understand it, to stay in love. And if you notice, they don't stay in love. Conrad could not stay in love beyond a month or two, sometimes a year. Heidi has decided to treat politics as superior to love. Then you have Neil, between his painting and his stereotyping of others and looking for companionship, looking for meaning, being destroyed by a woman who's just not ready for this. And then notice, she decides to go back to Tanzania after years and years of not seeing him. And then, because he was hungry for love, he embraces her. There is no resistance. He waited for her. This told me about this yearning for love as a central part of the human condition. I understand in the age of social media, when you listen to our students, have you noticed, Julie, they don't talk about love.
Ah, you know, what do you find that they talk about instead?
Well, some of them were telling me that they just want to talk about fleeting relationships. Some were telling me that they don't want to fall in love. They're afraid to fall in love. And
Yes, well,
there are sections in which I address this.
That's right.
This fear.
Yeah, I think it was was it Heidi? Oh no, it was Adora who mentioned, sorry,
Yes,
I interrupted you.
Elias.
Yes,
Yes.
but then there was also, I think it was Adora who was talking about when she first met, when she was
Yes.
talking to Elias,
Yes. Yeah.
that, you know, she had fallen in love with someone
Yes.
who didn't want to admit that it hurt him. I think you should read that section. I
Yes.
think it's really wonderful. I actually wrote it down because I wanted you to have a look at it. Let's see.
If you can give
yes,
me the page number.
Right, hold on. Oh, I can't find it. I thought I wrote it down with, right. Oh, yeah, 78. Her Thoughts on Love, 78. Yeah, I found it.
Okay.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Right? So from the top where she talks about, that she was ready to love.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you could probably start, I don't know, is your pagination the same as mine?
I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
wondering.
yeah. Here, this part when it says, I understand.
understand,
Yeah, that part. Is that the same for you? You want to read mine instead?
Yes.
Sure.
Let me-
So it's from there and then
Okay.
onto the next page.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand, Elias. I too am in the same situation. I have loved once, only once, very deeply. I gave the man my entire being, soul and body, without getting anything in return. I'm now left with a memory which refuses to die. For now, I'm in love with my work on the African body. The man I went for took pride in being the type who could love and hide it.
That's the one. That's the line I was
After
thinking
the
of.
relationship is
That's the
over.
one I was thinking of. Yeah.
I don't believe in that kind of love. I don't even think of that as love, as I understand it. Elias nodded his head in agreement and then said, how does one hold love in one's heart without suffering? It doesn't make sense. Not that love is sensible, but still, I don't understand this hiding thing, said Elias. That is the point. I too am puzzled, just like you. I didn't believe him then, and I still do not believe it now. Frankly, when he told me that, I concluded that he really did not love me, although he thought he did. Mm-hmm. Oh well, that was the guy I loved, without knowing why I loved him so much. I don't know why. Maybe it was his sex, since he was good at it.
Right. Yeah, so that...
And then there is, I think you'll love this.
Okay, sure.
She was a bit embarrassed and was thinking how heroic it was of her, an African woman, to refer to sex so fearlessly. Even now, there are streets that I cannot drive by, restaurants in which I couldn't eat, theaters to which I could not go, suits and pants which I imagine him in, and which I could not bear to see, because of this man, whom I still see in those places. And he dared me when he told me that he still loved me, and has buried that love in his heart. And of course he had many lovers after that, whereas I still have not seen another man, because I'm still in love.
Mm. Yeah. So her ability, she's just got this. Most of the characters, I mean, even Conrad in his way.
You love Conrad, don't you?
I don't love Conrad. No, I don't. He's intriguing.
For him.
But it's,
Yes.
he's well, we have a whole other novel about him.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they all are very capable of, really, I mean, of loving for long periods of time, loving passionately, loving
Yes.
is suffering, loving in spite of getting anything back,
Precisely,
right? I mean,
yes. It's totally
amazing,
unlike
yeah.
our themes now.
Yeah.
I
You know,
understand.
the men and the women equally.
Yes, equally.
They're all very.
It's
yes.
unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
This, I
Yeah.
bond with my students very deeply, like you. I love them, and vice versa. So we jam together on Fridays, music, and I get to them.
Yeah.
And then what I'm learning is that A, they're afraid of falling in love, and B, even when they fall in love, particularly the women, they enter it without fully giving into it, afraid that if they did, that there is no guarantee that they're going to be loved in return.
Yes,
We discussed this in the classrooms, and
Yes. Well, I don't know. My daughter just recently fell in love.
Yes.
Yes. She's going to probably kill me for saying this. You'll have to edit this part of the.
it's all right. It's quite natural.
And I think she was very vulnerable in that position. So I wouldn't agree with you that I think they're incapable of it, just based on my own experience recently as a mother and seeing what she went through. Yeah, I mean, I admire this about your characters, and maybe there is something that's very devoted about. They're very.
All of them, if you have noticed, Julie.
Yeah.
Look at Neil.
Yeah, I mean, he's
He's
faithful for 20
yes,
years
20 years and unafraid.
to a woman who
and
doesn't
then-
love him.
Yes.
Oh, he doesn't think. Who does love him, but who won't be with him.
Who won't be with
Yes,
him,
yes.
and who was going out of her way. I think I sensed this,
Yeah.
although I did not do it. I think she loved him actually, but because of this political project,
Yeah.
she has decided not to let herself go.
Or because and also because of his limitations.
Because of
he
his
has
limitations.
to grow too.
That's
he
right.
Has to grow
He
as
did
well.
not grow enough
Yes.
for her.
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
essentially saying, he's still white.
Yeah.
He's still a white man.
And you know, there's a wonderful
Yes.
section of that too. I mean, I had written that down because she even tells him something like, Neil, look, you do things that you were not aware of, that have hurt women. So there's calling him out as a man and calling him out as a white man and just a white person, right?
Yes.
I mean, I think there are all the levels of things that he doesn't understand.
Remember that major argument
Yes.
that they had? She walked out on him.
Yeah.
She told him, you don't seem to understand.
Yeah, yeah.
And she felt like telling him, I don't think you'll ever understand me.
But yet she didn't really love anybody else either. I mean, it
No.
seems, I don't know what happened
She
between
didn't.
those. Was she with anybody else in the 20 years?
Not this character.
Nothing.
You have Adora and her obsession with the African biological self,
Yeah.
who was decided after she loved once and she was told that she's not loved. She decided to project that love to academic work.
Right.
Then you have the Asian women. Remember what Conrad did to them? He traumatized each and every one of them. So you can imagine if I were to write about them even more and develop them into full-fledged characters. Each and every one of them is a subject for a full-fledged novel. Where did this trauma take them? What happened to them after Conrad?
Yeah. Well, most of them, I was pleased, seemed to be fine. I mean, at least they ended up.
Yes.
At least they ended up with someone
Freeing
better.
yes, exactly. They
Or
freed
some-
themselves.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
they grew, yes. So I was pleased, like when one of them, was like, I've had enough of this guy. I'm going back to work.
That's right.
And then she runs off with her boss. Which
Yes,
was
that's
the
it.
last one. Yeah. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question for
Sure.
you, so that I can learn from you.
Sure.
What are some of the flaws that you sense in Cambridge days?
Oh, that's an unfair question to spring on me in an interview of you.
No, it's a conversation. So that it won't spill over the sequel that you're reading now. Because I'm trying to redeem Conrad, as you know.
Oh, right.
I'm
You-
so obsessed with
Flaws-
Conrad.
Yes, why? Why do you think you're so obsessed with Conrad?
I don't know. I've been trying to understand myself. I
Yeah.
don't know why I chose Conrad over and against all the other characters.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
for
he comes back
rebirth
to
and-
life. I mean,
Yes.
he's kind of reincarnated in
Yeah,
the next
I
book,
wanted
right?
to reform him.
Yeah.
I wanted him to get a second chance
Yeah.
to present himself to the world.
to present because it strikes me that he's become more of his pure soul in the second book.
Precisely.
And his misogynistic
Yes. Have you
racist
noticed?
his qualities are gone.
Because
Yes.
he's wearing a
He's
nobody
reborn
now,
into-
no eyes.
But no,
You see.
but no eyes too. I mean, well,
No
yes, he's
exactly.
blind. You should explain
Yes.
how you
no
preconceived
eyes.
him. Yes.
Yeah, no eyes, no bodily eyes.
Yes.
The eyes
Oh,
that were...
and he's black.
Yeah.
Is he a black man in this?
Conrad?
Yes, in the new book, right? He's black.
No, he has no color.
Oh, he has no color.
No color.
But people respond to him as a
If
black
he is
man.
black.
Yes, yes.
Again, it's the theme of masks.
Right.
He's just
Right.
human. I couldn't even imagine his skin color.
Yeah,
At all.
right. But he's aware of how others are responding to him.
Precisely.
Very often, right?
Exactly.
Right.
But he's not black. No.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes. So clearly, though, there's something in this character's complexity that's intriguing to you, in spite of his flaws.
Yes.
Yeah.
Particularly Conrad. I just want to understand a human being like that.
Yeah.
When you give him these new eyes now, he could see what he was not capable of seeing before
Yeah.
with the bodily eyes, which caused him to traumatize others, most particularly women.
Yeah.
Now the dream is, with these new eyes, he's going to look at all these women whom he saw through the lens of the bodily eyes, with new eyes.
Yeah.
And
No, he
then-
sees everything all around him.
And if you notice,
his neighbors,
he sees deeply everything.
Yes, yes, yes. He's become a pure spirit. I mean,
Precisely. Remember,
yes.
his earlier project was women, victimizing women,
Yeah.
hunting them down.
Yeah.
Here, he is looking at the world.
Yes.
Every being, from
Right.
non-beings to human beings, become,
Yeah. So it seems like you really had a
Meaningful
need
to him.
to redeem him.
yes, which must tell you that I wasn't happy with him in the first novel. But I disciplined myself to presenting him, present him in the raw way in which he appeared to the world when he was a flawed human being.
Yes. Yeah.
So in the passionate man, I'm trying to represent
And
him
there's
to the world.
passion again.
Yes, exactly, passion again.
But I think it's important. It's always for you. I mean, there's obviously sex is an issue in the book, but for you, it strikes me for all of your characters, passion is, this is it's an enormous
Precise. Sex
it's
is just
an enormous
a minor
story, right?
segment of it.
Yes.
And this is what I want Conrad to show
Right.
us.
I mean, there's something very sacred and holy about Conrad's passion.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I mean,
including his flaws,
Yeah.
which you were the one
Yeah.
of the few
Yeah.
readers who saw that and who did not condemn him for it.
Yeah.
You sensed his full-fledged
Okay.
human
Yes.
presence.
Well, I think it's time to end this conversation. It's been multifaceted and very interesting, and I really thank you for this opportunity to get to talk to you about your work.
I should
And-
thank
and,
you for drawing me out. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I'm so fortunate. You
Yes.
made me like my novel. Thank you
Great.
very, very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you all.